This is the Asian Film Review with Adam.
And Mike Uhama.
Mike Uhama, which is a reference I roughly get. I know you talk about him a lot. We have to cover him in a highly recommended, I believe, at some point.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Today we're doing the director review, or a director review. We're covering one that a lot of people are probably not very familiar with. They might be somewhat familiar with the one film that we're going to cover and may not have gone past that. Because I know both of us, I've seen one other film of his before doing this, but I know for you, you've only seen the one film that we're going to talk about a bit later. Yeah. But we're covering Toshiaki Toyoda. So quick background, he's born in Osaka Prefecture. He was actually a chess master and was going to get a degree just based on that. And then he decided he didn't want to do that. He decided he wanted to do film instead. So he started off as assistant director and kind of worked his way up. And then he started with Porno Star, which is known as Tokyo Rampage here, which makes more sense, but we'll get to that. It won him an award, a Directors Guild of Japan New Directors Award, whatever that means. I guess it's just for upcoming directors. And then he just went from there. One interesting thing is that he got drug charges and had to go back 2 years, was in jail for 2 years. And my understanding is Japanese police system, if I'm using the right term, they're extremely tough on drug charges. So he was kind of very lucky to get off with only a couple years. I'm not too sure if it was possession or trafficking. I couldn't really find any information on that.
I would guess because of his stature, and that's probably really what benefited him getting such a light sentence.
And I'm guessing it's probably possession and not trafficking would be my guess, because I think the two would make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it was funny, in one of the interviews, that the interview for Blue Spring, one of the person who was interviewing him asked him about freedom, like what he believes the true definition of freedom was, and his kind of definition was, well, there's no real such thing as true freedom, so I don't really know the answer to that. But she followed it up because the second film that he did, Nine Souls, which we're not covering here, but it's basically about a bunch of prisoners escaping. And she asked, like, well, isn't that film kind of about obtaining freedom? And his comment back was, well, I don't know, but I imagine prisoners are the ones that desire freedom the most, but I've never been in jail. Cut to 2 years later, and he finds himself in jail. So interviews, there's quite a few out there, especially on the Nine Souls and the Blue Spring DVDs. I didn't really sit through them because it was kind of an afterthought. I kind of got a chunk out of both of them. But he's a very reserved character, which I always kind of appreciate. Doesn't play out pretentious at all. He's kind of the one that almost downplays what it is and tries to say that there's really no deeper meaning. I'm just a director. Which is kind of like the same demeanor that I like that Tsukamoto takes. Like, he never really boasts about his films. Versus, like, as we talked before, Park, who is very much into, pushing himself as much as he can. And so,
yeah.
Yeah, so he seems like a generally interesting character. So it was nice to kind of see that personality in him. So I would recommend checking out interviews. There was a couple where they asked him a lot of long, confusing questions, but it was kind of interesting to see him try to respond to them. It was just that type of interview where they asked, like, what do you think of current society? What would you like to change? And, just loaded questions like that.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting character, so if you're interested after this, I would recommend checking out interviews with him, because, yeah, it's just good stuff. So we picked 4 films just because his filmography is not that big. So we picked Tokyo Rampage, which was his first film. And then Blue Spring is the next. Yeah. Blue Spring, which is the one that both of us have seen quite some time ago. Hanging Garden, and then Monsters Club. So as far as other films, the only one that I've seen is Nine Souls. And it's pretty decent. It's kind of, I would say, along the lines of Blue Spring. Mm-hmm. It's just a bunch of guys escaping from prison and trying to find their own way in the world, and all of them kind of falling prey to different vices, which I think is very much how Blue Spring plays out in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that one to you if you enjoyed Blue Spring, but not really discussing it. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't have too much commentary on it other than remembering seeing it and enjoying it. So, kick things off, start on the first movie. So we have Tokyo Rampage, 1988. A young man gets off the train in the morning and wanders the business districts aimlessly. He runs across some Yakuza gangsters whom he despises and goes on a killing spree, but soon becomes involved with a subordinate gang. So, two main players, Chiara Junia as Arano and Onimaru as Kamijo. So, Arano is a mean-looking dude. When you agree, that opening scene when he's walking towards the camera, he just has a very mean face. So I'm surprised. He almost seems like he could be a niche actor, but his filmography is pretty small. I've seen him in Ichi 1 and Nine Souls. Have you seen Ichi 1?
I haven't. I've only seen Ichi the Killer.
Ichi 1 is pretty awful. It tries to go for shock value, but it's... I don't know. I remember a few scenes, like one of the guys having sex with a girl and almost strangling her to death type thing, but done in like a really cartoony way that makes you kind of despise it, So...
And, I mean, that's a prequel, but was made after Ichi the Killer, right?
Yeah, for sure. So the major villain is this guy who's a professional at breaking bones. So he kind of goes up against Ichi, and I think it was in high school. So I'm not even sure if that had to tie in with a manga. I think it was just a cash grab.
Oh, yeah.
What about the anime? Did you see that?
Nope.
No? Okay, that's not as bad. It's like 45 minutes. So it's like a short story. I don't remember much about it, but it was not that bad. It's 45 minutes, so... But anyways, moving on here. I'm going to skip a few points because they're kind of useless here. It very much has the feeling of being a late 90s movie, though, as far as look as everyone goes.
Yeah. And just a slight correction, I'm saying when you started the episode, you said 88, and this movie was made in 98.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, so it very much has the feel of a 90s film as far as fashion goes. That one gangster's hair is pretty atrocious. But I had to be forgiving for a lot of the fashion sense. Arano in just the green jumper, though, that's a classic look, so that's not really dated.
Yeah, I'm saying it worked well. And yes, I'm saying it's really just in general, it just, like you said, just feels like a 90s movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wonder if that's where the name porno star came from, because if I remember right, that's when you could really that's where you were finding constant T-shirts that just had porn star written on it.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can get that name out of, because I don't understand where it came from.
Yeah, it makes no sense with the film whatsoever. Tokyo Rampage is a much better title for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Much more suiting. So, for the most part, the character of Arano, there's really nothing there for most of the majority of the film. He does some killing, but otherwise he doesn't really reveal any sort of personality. And the first time he does talk is in a scene where they're dealing with American drug dealers. And he makes a joke and starts laughing, and everyone in the whole room just starts laughing, but for a dumb period of time. But that was the first time he really developed any personality. So it took quite a long time to get there, which I felt was kind of a detriment to the film, that it took about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour in before he even really said much of anything.
Um, I'm kind of on the fence because yeah, it's hard to get into the character, but kind of guess you kind of have to step back and see what the movie is as a whole after it's over. Yeah, when you first watch it and it's hard to get into, like you said, because there's nothing there. He says very little, and in general, you know very little about this character. But in hindsight, this movie it's kind of like an outlaw coming into town to clean it up. So
Yeah.
him being this unknown stranger, it works to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Like say, it's one of those things where perhaps it just wasn't done as well as it should have been. Like say,
Yeah, I think it took a bit too long to get there for my taste. Like in retrospect, with how the film played out, it's not as bad. But when I started it, I thought it was like I thought I was going to be disappointed by the film overall, just going on the first quarter of it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I can see that because I mean, you spend a lot of time with the characters. I'm saying, I guess that's just going to eventually be a staple of these films, and there's not very much explored with them for the amount of time that you spent with them.
Yeah. One thing I really dig is his obsession with knives. For some reason, I felt that gave him a bit of character. Just the fact there's a bag that he carries around with him that people, it's not really revealed until later what's actually in it, but he's just carrying a bag full of knives. So that's what he came to town with, which I found pretty amusing.
Yeah, and I like that that wasn't really revealed until the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is one scene where he does take out a gangster, and that's the first time that we find out he has a bag of knives. And it's actually the one scene that really took me out of the film, because I thought it was very cartoonish, as he has this gangster up against a car, and he probably stabs him like maybe 30-40 times. And you can also very much tell that he's stabbing into a board, which with the way that his body is shaped. And I think it would have been better suited if he just would have stabbed him like 5 or 6 times. But instead he had like 5 or 6 knives, and he kept into, pulling them out and stabbing him again and again and again. So
I could see that. I'm saying it didn't bother me too much because it's the only time it happens in the movie. Everything else is either hidden through edits or hidden through camera work, like whip pans. And so to finally have this extremely violent scene happen, it was okay. It certainly could have been executed better, but I'm saying this is a movie this is the kind of movie I'm very forgiving of, just because it's a first time feature, and so it's very rough. Is that that's not really. I'm not trying to really make excuses for it. I'm just more forgiving of it, but I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I agree as well. I think some of the elements that he kind of gets better at later in his films are just in here, but not fully realized. Just as far as character build, like he kind of has that dark, brooding protagonist thing going on, but it's not fully realized. I think the character, even at the end, although he does build a bit more as a character as it grows, he's not relatable to me. I never really cared for the outcome, like what was going to happen to him.
Now,
so it's more a film where you're just kind of along for the ride.
I'm saying now that I would consider an actual fault, is that you don't care what happens to him. But at the same time, it's just, I'm saying I don't see that it was he or the movie was designed to have you relate to him or his plight. He is just this guy showing up to kill Yakuza members. I'm saying that's his only motivation, and for the movie, it worked, in my opinion.
Would you like any background at all into him?
No, not really, because it's just not necessary. Because I heard it. I'm saying I'm not going to try to take credit as my criticism of the movie. But I read that they said it's basically designed like a spaghetti western, and you can kind of see some correlations between that and like the Man with No Name, and like how it's designed of this no name character showing up and just killing everybody that he believes is inherently evil. So in that regard, it was okay that there was no backstory, because there's I'm trying to think how I want to say it. There's basically no journey to go on with the character. It's just him showing up, killing people, and so just like any backstory, just would have been pointless.
Yeah, I can understand. And as far as the spaghetti western type aspect goes, nothing really happens. How do I want to word this? When the violence come out, it's all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, and it's just over the top. Near the end of the film, when he kind of goes in and just, basically kills everyone. It was very well done, I would say. But it took a long time to build up to that amount of violence. There was a few scenes before where he killed the odd person, so he kind of got an idea of what he was aiming to do. But that final build-up was a rewarding payoff for me, I would say. I also do more elements that I thought he used a bit better later. And he only uses them in very slight touches, but kind of taking on surreal aspects, like very subtly. And I'm not sure if you dug this scene, because I think if I remember in the notes, you were not as much a fan of it, but I did really enjoy when it started raining knives in a couple of scenes.
It's a good metaphor, but I thought the visual was weak. And it could have been just the dated effects, because it's computer effects, obviously. I'd say even Japan's not crazy enough to just throw knives at their actor. But yeah, I'm saying, because there's also a secondary scene, not as big, but after he stabs a skateboarder for calling himself like Youth Yakuza or something like that. Yeah. And you hear the knives clank, and he turns around and there's just a bunch of knives embedded in concrete. And yeah, I can appreciate the metaphor of what they're trying to say, but like just the visual didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. Why did he learn skateboarding? What did that really have to add to the plot?
And nothing. I think it was just, I really don't know. I guess it was just to show that he's still he's still a kid. He's just not this like monster that's just killing people. I think it was also just the best way they could try to integrate the woman wanting to work with him.
Yeah, but any reactions he had with anyone else was pretty cold. Though at times it was interesting. I like how when he's at the pad, I'll call it for better lack of a word, with the gangsters, how there's a couple scenes where all he's doing is lighting matches and throwing them on the ground.
Yeah.
And the other guy comes in and the floor is just covered with that. And to touch on the other characters, what was the other main character's name here? Kamijo. I was really not invested in him and him trying to become this Yakuza boss. His gang kind of bored me is kind of a strong term to use, but I don't know. What did you think of all the antagonists in the film? I felt the focus was, even though Arano doesn't say much, I felt that the focus was pretty much solely on him, and everything else was kind of just backdrop.
Well, to me, the movie is really about the relationship between Arano and Kamijo, and kind of they don't really have mutual respect for one another. There's kind of like this, I'm trying to think.
It's like a lack of any sort of relationship is what brings them together.
Yeah, I'm saying
in a very weird way.
They work with each other, but they don't trust each other. So the movie's real focus is on the tension between these two, and like how they're using each other to an extent. And yeah, this is probably just the weakest part of the movie. There's very little characterization, and it worked for Arano because there is no character there really. But in general, it's hard to understand people's motivation in this movie. Like,
Yeah.
like you said that he's trying to become this yakuza. Kamijo is, and in general, I didn't know what he was trying to do because he resists the yakuza in the beginning, saying, no, I can't join you because my father didn't want me to, and my mother's still alive.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get this idea that he's just trying to run this club of his, and just kind of do, bits of drugs and prostitution too. But eventually,
And he seems to stick with that for probably half of the film, and there's just kind of this weird switch.
Yeah.
That starts with his friends dying, and him kind of confronting the yakuza member he was asked to assassinate in the beginning of the film. But it doesn't really. It feels like an awkward switch in the film.
Yeah, it's just you don't understand where the change came from, or just in general why he's doing the things that he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I'd say that's probably it's not a bad movie. It's just a weak movie, and that's just one of the things. That's where the weakness comes from. It's weak characters and weak motivation.
Yeah, the romantic interest that wasn't even there too.
Yeah.
She showed up and there was just no actual connection. You just kind of went along with what she wanted, but in the end, she didn't even seem to really want a relationship with him. And it was just kind of more the idea of revolting against her boyfriend and taking this weird guy off to see this festival. So
yeah, I'm saying talking about running off to Fiji, and it just came out of nowhere. Like it took me forever just to realize who she was.
Yeah.
And she's trying to. There's a bit of dialogue trying to insinuate that it's love at first sight, even though they had no interaction beforehand.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's a good movie, but it's definitely flawed.
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching it overall, but it's kind of there's just so many flaws you can pick at.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to recommend, especially comparing to his other work. But for being a first film, it's pretty solid, and it gives you an idea of where he was going as a director. You see a lot of the things that he built on with his later films.
Yeah, for a first movie, it's actually looks good, and there's a lot of value in it. I'm saying watching it, I didn't hate it. It's just like I said, once you start to pick at it, you find more issues with it. But
yeah,
for a movie that would eventually become his standing theme of basically youth in revolt, it worked. It was good enough.
Yeah, I think with us too, watching Blue Spring before and looking back at this film kind of helped our opinion of this film. Because we saw it as kind of a base of where he started, and I found probably more appreciation in this film that others might if they just watched Tokyo Rampage and haven't gone and seen any of his other films. So
yeah.
Yep. So anything else you want to kind of touch on with this film?
No, not really. I'm say it's just an okay movie.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have. Yeah, I just nitpick at it, but the things I'm nitpicking, it didn't really upset me that much. So. But the next one, I think we're going to talk about it a shitload. And that would be Blue Spring. So, long synopsis here. So I'll try to plow through it.
Say if you want to just do the clip notes, you can, because I think everyone really knows what this is about.
No, I'll do it anyways. It's always a fun challenge. So, Asahi High is lower-end senior high school for boys. It exists more as a dumping ground for the unwanted youth, where even the teachers themselves view the students as a lost cause. With the latest group of seniors graduating, Kujo and his friends Oki, Yukio, Yoshimaru, and Ota are now left as the school's primary gang. To decide who is the leader, they play a rooftop game of who can clap their hands as many times before grabbing onto the railing or plummeting to their death. Kujo eventually finds himself the leader, and while his best friend Aoki is excited for the new power, Kujo shows disinterest in the idea. Kujo continues passive attitude an eventual interest in schoolwork causes Aoki to resent his friend and start his own gang. So there we go. That's pretty much a good summary, short of spoiling the film entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like I said, this is probably why we chose... Oh, actually, you get the notes on this one. I forgot. So you get to kick it all off. I should have made you fucking read that.
Especially since I was the one who wrote it. But yeah, like...
Did you write it, or you didn't just take it from IMDb or Letterboxd?
I wrote it out and say I took different pieces of information from other sources, but I wrote it out.
Nice. It sounds professional. Well done. So.
But yeah, like you're saying, this movie's the reason why we decided to do this episode on this director. Yeah. When did you first see it?
It came out in 2001. When did Battle Royale come out?
It came out the year before.
The year before. So I probably saw it maybe 2002? 2003. It took me a while to become aware of it, and it was kind of a random watch in some ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't really get... It's not as popular as it should be.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm saying, why do you think that is? I mean, it has achieved, very slowly has achieved a kind of cult status, but why do you think it just kind of fell through the cracks?
Because at the time, he wasn't a big name director. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a trend of making movies about youth and revolt. So I think it was kind of whitewashed.
Yeah, because
that's really the only reason I can think of. Because it is superior to a lot of its counterparts that kind of fall under the same genre.
Yeah, because I would actually say you can draw parallels between this and even Battle Royale.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but to me this is much better because I just have never been a big fan of Battle Royale. I'm saying it's a perfectly fine movie. You know, I'm not trying to...
It's a super fun movie.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not trying to be...
But it doesn't have too much depth.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not trying to be... You know, the elitist dickhead. It's like, well, that movie's beneath me. No, I mean, it's fine. Like you said, it's fun. I'm saying this one, it takes that same idea of, you know, this, you know, youth being completely out of control, and it does more with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, for me, I couldn't tell you when I saw it, probably around the same time, you know, 2002, 2003. And I think...
And I've revisited this is probably my fourth viewing of it, I think.
Okay. Because I have no idea how many times I've seen it. This is probably like only my...
But do you think you've seen it more than a few times, or?
It's probably like only my third time.
Okay, because I knew I watched it once. The second reason I watch a lot of films is to watch it with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I revisited one time in between, because it had been like 2002 since I last seen it. So I probably revisited it like around 2010 or something like that. So...
I have revisited the ending multiple times, though. Yes. I'm saying because you can still see, you can find clips of that on YouTube, and I'm saying we'll eventually get into why that is, but
yeah,
which I guess is kind of odd that I've watched an ending more so than I've watched a movie. But the director did make a documentary between this and Tokyo Rampage, but I don't know. Did you see a substantial difference in the quality in filmmaking between Blue Spring and Tokyo Rampage?
Yeah, for sure. I think this one is vastly superior to Tokyo Rampage in almost every aspect of what Toyoda does. And again, going back, not to say that Tokyo Rampage is a bad movie, but this takes everything that he was good at and expands on it. Mm-hmm. And I am curious, the documentary on Chain, I'm going to try to track it down. It just sounds kind of interesting. He covers a boxer that has basically lost every single match he ever had. So...
That's very strange.
Yeah. So, kind of an interesting subject matter. But, yeah, I think he improved greatly. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. I would say, most notably in terms of characters... Because everything he does is a character piece. There's actually from my perspective, there's very little narrative there. I'm saying his movies are always focused on the characters, And that was, the biggest, as we said, the biggest drawback of Tokyo Rampage is it's just very weak. Very weak characters and not fully realized. In this one, the characters are realized and he gives a lot of depth to each one. Offhand I couldn't tell you, which characters did what, like by the name, but I can distinctly remember each character, and what happens to them in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe too, it's possible that budget helped him out with this one.
Mm-hmm.
But he did mention in like the tidbits that I was taking from interviews that one of his favorite things about making indie films is working on a limited budget, which is a really weird thing that I haven't heard before. But he likes the idea of rushing and deadlines. So I mean, if it works for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't mean a shitty movie. Like, this is a really good movie, but it's just something I've never heard before. It's a very weird statement to me.
Yeah, I'm saying, there are just some people who work better under pressure, and he might be one of those people.
Yeah, but to say that's his favorite thing about making indie films is kind of, it's odd to me.
Yeah. I'd say he seems like a very odd person, because I guess to me it's very strange on how he started his filmmaking career, because like he had said in the intro he was a chess player, and then he just kind of abandoned that. I think he abandoned it like at 17.
Yeah, so he was considered a child prodigy.
Yeah,
so he was pretty much well known in the world of chess. It's shogi was the name of the. It's not a sport, whatever the game.
Yeah,
but it's pretty much chess.
Yeah,
like our interpretation of chess. So.
Yeah, I'm saying it's strange that you go from that to movies overnight. And the way he got into movies was by writing a letter to a director and saying, hey, I love your work. Can I come work for you? And he did.
Mm-hmm. I wish it could work that way.
But, kind of going back to, the characters, I don't know how many people know, but the movie is based on a manga. Mm-hmm. And there was a co-writer. I don't know if they took the co-writer from the manga or if this was just someone else. But there were other people involved in the writing of this. Do you think that's what helped, or was it just Toyoda expanding as a filmmaker and a writer?
He seems to go back and forth between taking source material, doing screenplays, and doing his own original films. And because a lot of them have the same feeling, I don't think the content influences him too much. I think his style very much comes through. And at least on this one, my understanding, I was looking up some info on the manga, and it's more kind of focused on the art of it and less on the story. So I think this one actually expands on what the manga was, but I don't want to be quoted on that because that was just kind of a rough review that I read, and that's how it sounded to me.
Yeah, and say so you haven't read it yourself, but you have read up on it.
No, with this, there's so much tie-ins with Toyoda in the interviews, and it's hard enough to watch as many films as we do in general. Mm-hmm. To be honest, to kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to read the manga this was based on, or read the novel that Hanging Garden was based on. Like, realistically, I'd like to, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just picking up tidbits here and there. So
yeah, I'm saying, we're not. I'm saying we're just giving our opinions on this. We're not trying to say something is absolute.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess the easiest way to sum up Blue String is to call it a coming-of-age story. Mm-hmm. And it is. I'm saying, it's not to say it's not, but it's the movie speaks, about, a failing education system for this. They don't really say it, but they kind of imply these are like kids from the lower class, and that's part of the reason why they have this kind of detachment from society, and that they are more of these kind of thuggish types.
Yeah.
But do you think that there was more to what the movie was saying besides kind of the education system?
Well, I think part of it was it kind of was a commentary on the failing Japanese economy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea was you would go through the school system and then find a job, and basically you would stay at that job pretty much until you die, was the system. And then when the economy was crashing in Japan, which I don't have much background, so again, I'm just going on broad generalizations. But those kind of ideas changed, and it wasn't necessarily the case anymore that was going to be our future. So I think this film is also trying to capture that point when the future became uncertain for a lot of youth during that time.
Yeah, I'd say that's actually a great note. Is that, with most coming of age movies, it's a character realizing, they're going through that sudden change and becoming adult and making adult decisions. And mm-hmm. This is them looking to the future and finding no hope in it.
A lot of it is the world kind of changing around them, is kind of forcing them to grow up. Although some of them, you can argue some of them really don't and kind of take alternative paths, but it's more the world around them that's affecting them than any sort of internal struggle or realization of that they're growing older and they have to change.
Yeah, I'm saying, again, that's a really good point of that they don't want to grow up, which is why, I can't think of the character, the one playing the guitar. I'm going to say he is terrified of the idea, that he's going to get held behind, and it results in a very violent outburst.
Yeah.
And then the same with Aoki. He sees his friend going forward while he wants to stay behind. This, being in control of the school is like that's his high point. He doesn't see himself going anywhere beyond that. And so that's why he starts his own gang, because he wants to stay there. He doesn't want to grow up.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm saying, I think that's just what makes this really interesting, is that it's not about these characters growing up. It's about how they react to this, as you said, this change being forced on them.
Yeah, for sure. They don't want high school to end because they're aware of what's ahead of them outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm saying I guess a little disheartening, because, you have like the one character who dedicated his life to baseball, and, his dream was to make it to the Nationals. And I find it very...
The school, it just isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Like the school he goes to. There's that really sad scene because it's only him, and he puts up a poster saying, like, students wanted,
mm-hmm.
And it's just him running in a field by himself, like doing the chant of the baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because it's just, he basically set up for failure because of the class that he's in. Economical, social class in the school he's been placed at. He's basically set up for failure, which a lot of the characters have been set up for. And it's kind of beyond their control, which makes a lot of this movie very tragic and sad.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the really great thing about this movie, is you get that with each character.
Mm-hmm.
Only a few of them actually explain what their dreams are. Aoki gives his kind of soliloquy at the top, saying, I dreamed of being a pilot. Mm-hmm. And you understand that that was never a possibility for him, or at least at the very least, he never saw that as a possibility for him, even though that was his dream.
Yeah. One thing that's kind of interesting that I noticed too is there is no scenes outside of the school whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It's always focused on the school. There's some people who come into it in a way or show up like on the outskirts, but at no point are we aware of these kids' life outside of school.
Yeah, there's like that very... It's an amusing scene, but it's a very odd scene where a Yakuza member shows up on a bike. I believe the actor was actually in Tokyo Rampage as one of the gang members. And he shows up, I think he's looking for Aoki, and one of the blonde students starts giving him shit over his motorcycle. And the next scene you see the guy driving off with the blonde kid with the bloody nose. And that's the entire scene.
My idea of a backstory to that is that kid may have shown up because Aoki would have hurt his younger brother,
mm-hmm.
or something like that. I don't know if that's how it was supposed to cross, but that's kind of my own backstory that I came up with.
Yeah, because I would say it's certainly believable. It's just kind of such a weird moment because he just shows up, he takes one of the kids with a bloody nose, and then they just leave, and that's the last you see of either of them.
Mm-hmm.
But again, kind of go back to what you're saying. People will show up, like the young girl, but that's everything is about this school.
Yeah,
and I think that's. I guess you could kind of see that the school is kind of is being viewed as its own social structure, and what these kids do when they do have power, even if it's just as this kind of illegal gang in a school.
Yeah. Well, you still, like, they're trying to build up for the future. Like, as far as them being gangsters, there's a lot of times that it still points out that they're just kids.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of playing this role that they want to be greater than what they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they do a lot of childish shit throughout. So
yeah, I would say the thing that made me, I would say, just kind of thinking about they're doing childish shit because when Aoki finally takes over, starts his own gang, he just goes into just a violent rampage, and when he puts a can of like a Coke can in a kid's mouth and kicks it.
Oh, that one was fucked.
Yeah. I would say, and then he spray paints the kid's face. I don't know how they did that, but it's like, God damn, that is just a mean-spirited scene.
Yeah. No, it's definitely cringeworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the kid on the ground is just chanting something, and you don't know what it is. He's just like repeating something over and over again. Like he's trying to get himself mentally out of the situation. It's a really fucked up scene.
Yeah, it is. I guess since we've already, spent so much time talking about the characters, the cast is very solid in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, there is great writing behind the movie, but the actors themselves do a lot to bring their own personality to the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree on the cast. One thing that was also interesting in one of the reviews is Toyoda says like he has used the same actors before, but the only reason he will use them is if he finds interest in them, and that's more as a person than an actor. He also made the statement that he doesn't believe in making friends with the actors that he works with. So the only reason he uses them again in a few he has if he thinks as an actor that they actually have anything to contribute anymore or that he wants to explore, because he does use some actors in other films. Mm-hmm. But I think the very cold approach that he takes to casting is actually works in his favor, whereas some directors will always just cast their friends, right?
Yeah.
So I think that plays in his favor, and I think that's kind of why this cast turned out as good as it did.
No, I would agree. I would say it sounds cold, that he doesn't want to make friends with the characters. But at the end of the day, this is... you can look at it as it's both a business project and an art project. And I would say, and when directors start recycling the actors, it's fun if the movies aren't being taken seriously. Like a Kevin Smith movie, that's fine that he recycles his actors because, they're just... I was going to say they're shit movies, but I don't want to be that disparaging. But they're just...
I would agree, but...
they're just...
That's another conversation.
Yeah. I would say, but those are just meant to be fun, so that's okay. Mm-hmm. But with these kind of movies, if he starts to recycle the actors, you lose the characters because you're just thinking, oh, it's that guy from that one movie or that woman from that one movie.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of respect for that approach.
Mm-hmm.
And... speaking of characters, once again, there is a great emphasis on the soundtrack in this movie.
Yeah. He does soundtracks throughout all of his films. I think that's one of his strong suits, and I think it's not something that's always talked about with directors. Mm-hmm. One director that always comes to mind, and I'm going to fuck up this name because I've never heard it pronounced, but Refn, R-E-F-N?
I do.
Okay, but one thing I've always liked about his films is how he's so good at putting in musical cues, like just this is the perfect time to put in this song, and he picks the song very well, and his timing is always very good. And I think Toyoda has that skill as well, which puts a nice punctuation on some moments in this film.
Yes, I would agree, absolutely. Because it's. I guess you could say it's basically a punk soundtrack. I'd say just lots of just kind of raw guitars, very guttural sounds, and like you were saying, he knows how to time it very well to where you hear that music, and it kind of gets you going because it kind of gets your energy going, but it really brings out the characters and like kind of where they are mentally too. I don't even know how to like really describe that, but I mean, when you hear that,
it brings like an emotional sting to it.
Yes,
yeah.
You really understand where they are, and I just find that interesting, especially since it's not like a composed score. It is him using band's music.
Yeah, there are a few original, though, I believe as well. Yeah,
and of course, I think. What's the name of the band that's used at the end?
I forget.
It's something
it before.
It is
like something Machine Gun.
Yeah, it's
I believe.
Machine Gun Elephant, something like that.
Oh yeah, that is it. Machine Gun Elephant or Elephant. It's a combination of those words. I'm pretty sure. But I know they were a very popular band for quite a few years, and then they disbanded a few years back.
I was going to say, I guess that's kind of a redundant question. I was going to ask if this movie made them big. I guess it probably made them big in the West because it seemed like their name popped up more after this movie came out or was more available in the West.
Yeah, I believe so. Because again, it's used so well in the movie that it's worthwhile checking them out. Mm-hmm. And also his use of slow motion.
Yes.
Along with the music too. Like that starting theme where you kind of establish who they all are. They do that like slow motion of them walking back to the school with the music playing. I don't know what it is, but his timing is so fucking perfect with stuff like that. That's one of my favorite things about him.
Yeah, I'm say it makes the atmosphere of the movie, and it helps bring out the characters.
Yeah.
We didn't really touch on it, but I'm say you had mentioned that in comparison to like Tokyo Rampage, it's used more to like sell how cool these characters are in that movie. Mm-hmm. They're just they're kind of shitty people, but they're very cool. You want to be them. And in this one, it's not selling anything. It's not trying to sell their toughness, their coolness, or anything else. It's just kind of you understanding the environment.
Yeah, for sure. Although near the end, I think it does have more of a... The end is a whole nother beast. We'll get to that.
Yeah. I guess I'll kind of jump into the ending. There's one thing I've noticed in his movies. He always has this one little, I guess you could call them surreal moments. They're a very visual moment where it's...
I mentioned that in Porno Star.
Yes.
Like I said, he always has these weird... He uses it very sparingly, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think I know which scene you're going to reference, but I want to throw in one of my favorite, which was earlier on in the scene. When that young kid decides to join the Yakuza. Mm-hmm. And he looks at his ice pop, which he just ate, mm-hmm. and it says loser on it, and he kind of tosses it up, but it has that weird CGI where it shows it landing, and then it does the subtitle showing it said loser.
Yeah.
Do you know about the whole ice pop thing?
I don't.
I don't quite understand it, but it's just a big thing where ice pops are extremely popular, and they almost always have win and lose sticks.
Huh.
So it's just like we've kind of had that here off and on, but it's so common. Like it's expected when you buy an ice pop that it's going to have the option to possibly win another one.
Oh, okay.
So that's why that one, it was when it popped up loser, it fit well because he didn't win, and it was a small little surreal moment just with the way it was shot and him throwing the stick away.
Yeah, I'm saying, and I'm glad you pointed that out because I can't recall when I first watched it. When I first watched it was actually on TV. It was on the IFC channel, which is, in hindsight, it's kind of weird to me. But when I rewatched it, it didn't come up. The subtitles didn't come up for that, so I didn't know what the popsicle stick said.
Oh, okay.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm saying, I guess you could kind of consider that surreal, but me personally, I didn't. I'm saying
it's just the way it was shot, with the way it threw up in the air and fell.
Sure, I'm saying that's a great way to kind of make a visual statement of how of that character.
Yeah, I guess surreal was the wrong word for me.
Not necessarily. I guess not necessarily. I just kind of have my own little weird hang-up with the word surreal, and I blame David.
No, I think I misused it there, but
I'll say, and I blame David Lynch entirely for my hang-up over the word surreal. But there's the raining knives sequence. There's a very odd sequence at the end where after everything's kind of come to a head and the two characters have been fighting it out, Aoki hangs out at the school. And say we'll get more into that aspect later. And when everyone comes back, you see Kujo walking through the school, and everyone just stops to look at Aoki up on the rooftop. And when it cuts to that, the whole school has been spray painted black. And it cuts back to Kujo looking again, and it cuts back to the school, and it's normal. What do you think that was supposed to represent?
I was kind of confused because I didn't even remember that scene when you pointed it out.
It's just it's a
so
really
I just
brief,
missed off.
Yeah, I can understand missing it. It's a very, very brief moment. It's like I even rewound it myself because I was like, wait, what? Huh? What? So
that's kind of cool. It's a nice touch. I'm kind of struggling to imagine what it represents.
Yeah, I'm gonna say because we talked about Aoki just. He kind of goes through the movie just spray painting things black. The room that they used to hang out in, he spray painted the chalkboard that they used to draw on black. Everything, he's painted chairs and desks and everything black. I guess, it works as this characterization kind of to the character, to where you see where he's at mentally. But I didn't quite understand what the meaning behind it was. Do you have an idea? There might not have been
an easy one to throw out, just as he's, becoming corrupt, more in tune with darkness and his dark self.
Yeah,
but that's a very simple explanation of it.
I'm saying, well, fuck, who knows? It could. I'm saying, just could not mean anything. Could just be something that they wanted the character to do.
Yeah.
But I think we've pussyfooted around it enough. Let's get into the ending.
Yeah, which I guess it's one of those things you can kind of fast forward through it, but you should really fucking watch this movie in general. But this ending, probably in my top 10 for films, for all films that I've seen for endings.
Yeah, I would. Like I said, I couldn't tell you a top 10, but it would definitely be up there.
It's one of the top 10 is kind of bullshit to say because it fluctuates, but that's something that could be up there. It's a very good
I'm saying, no, I understand what you're saying. You're not necessarily saying it's top 10, but if somebody were to ask you, what's your favorite ending, that's going to be up there.
Yeah. Yeah, so do you want to kind of break it down as much as you can?
Yeah, I guess. Like you're saying, it's kind of an abstract ending. There's not very much explained. So I'm saying there's a lot of movies that do that, but this is a movie that really kind of, it felt like it earned it because it got to a certain point. But again, after kind of Aoki and Kujo have just been fighting it out, and you see Kujo, he has hope for himself and starts to work towards it, where Aoki is rejecting his growth and wants to stay in the school. And it ends with him going up to the rooftop. He starts to spray paint his own shadow, which is really just a fantastic visual. And then you see a time lapse of him overlooking the city and overlooking the school for this entire length of night.
Yeah, which he just shot, right? It's an actual real time lapse.
Yeah, I would say they said that there's they made some cheats for the sake of the actor, so you can go to the bathroom and everything. But they said they actually shot all night with the actor up on the roof,
just standing there, which is crazy.
Yeah, because I'm gonna say that,
and it has the amazingly timed soundtrack.
Yes, I'm gonna say it is literally from sunset to sunrise. You see this actor in this one spot, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to say how much to talk about because it's just this. It finally becomes this emotional eruption of, even though these two characters are at ends with each other, they still love each other. There's still a very strong relationship there, and
there was friends. There was a short flashback at the end too, just text wise of them talking when they were first kids, like where they say their name and when they first started. I don't know if they have such a thing as preschool. I don't know how their system works, but like when they were small kids just starting school for the first time, where they introduced themselves, and it's obvious that they had a long-term relationship kind of building up to the start of this movie, where they're kind of, the idea of gangs kind of got built shortly. So
yeah,
but there's definitely, they still had that friendship there despite all their fighting. I always felt that they still kind of cared about each other.
Yeah, I'm saying it again. It's, they cared about each other, but it's their environment and their outlook that drove them apart.
Yeah, because I think very much Aoki's, all his revolt was reacting to I keep trying to scroll for the names, to Kujo's kind of change, because he very much looked up to Kujo as a friend, and then when Kujo kind of rejected the lifestyle that Aoki admired him for, he kind of revolted against it. So the whole reason he became this person was because of the friendship and how much he respected Kujo, that he was just devastated when he decided not to continue on with with his gang.
Yeah, I'm saying you can kind of see where it, like, Aoki kind of felt like he was being left behind. Like Kujo was going to go somewhere. Meanwhile, this school was all Aoki had.
Yeah,
I'm saying, so it makes for just an emotionally devastating moment, because you understand that this character has just reached this point where he gives up.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's what really makes the ending, again, the emotion aspect of it, but it's one of those endings where you understand how important every element of a film is, because it's in one part it becomes a very single take moment of Kujo running up onto the roof to where Aoki is, and it's all done in one take, slow motion, and there's just this really intense music playing. And so, I mean, it's just everything hitting you at once, and it just, not to repeat myself, but it's just a devastating scene to watch, because it's just, everything is just hitting that emotional core.
And the airplane flying over him before he does it.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional just thinking about this whole thing and recounting it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because, I mean, it's
just so tragic and well done.
Yes, I'm going to say tragic is the key point, because it's, like I said, you understand this character really just has given up on life. And even though they're at ends, this character, Kujo, is like up to the last minute trying to save his friend.
Yeah.
I'm saying and I love that the movie basically ends with Kujo staring at the spray painted shadow of Aoki.
Yeah. No, it's all. I can't speak highly enough of the ending of this film.
Yeah.
But the build up to it, the movie, like the whole movie is solid. I don't think I have a single complaint about this film.
No. I'm saying, because I didn't mean to skip over it, but I'm going to say there is actually quite a bit of dark humor to this, and it works well, because it doesn't take away from anything that's in the movie. Like, I absolutely love the very long joke of the kid getting slapped in the back of the head throughout the whole movie.
And he goes blind?
Yes. It's like that is like I think it happens at like the 45-minute mark or the hour mark, and it's like that is such a good punchline.
Yeah, and then later on we see them again, and his friend's like guiding him, and he's all nice to him now. Yeah.
I say, and then I'm trying to think of any other humorous moments, but Aoki, when he gets the water dumped on him when he's taking a shit. I'm gonna say that's just like that is such a bad day.
Oh, well, there's that point where the guy falls into the washroom and he holds a piece of shit and screams it and squeezes it.
Yeah, I'm saying then what happened to him before that. I'm saying he gets pissed on, and I'm saying a friend grabs. Or I'm sorry, not a friend. A guy that they're trying to beat up grabs somebody who's pissing at a urinal and spins him around. So Aoki gets pissed in the face first, and then they shove him and he falls into a stall and he gets shit all over his hand.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's one of those things where that's like the starting point of where he finally just, he snaps and he wants to, have this kind of violent rampage through the school, but it's done in a amusing manner.
Yeah.
But like I say, taking a step back, like you said, it's just such a well executed movie where everything was done the way it exactly needed to be done.
Yeah. Anything else to say on this one? I think we basically said it's must watch.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on. Again, let's see.
I'll take
this was released. Blue Spring was 2001. And then this was 2005, but I think he got arrested after making Hanging Garden. So,
and if you want, I will take the lead on this one, so that way you can do Monsters Club.
Do it.
Okay, Hanging Garden, 2005. This is a family rule for the I think chunk of Texas.
Kiyobashis.
No, I'm saying it looks like a chunk of Texas missing, but starting over, cut, action, whatever. Hanging Garden, 2005. The Kobayashi family has one rule in their house: they do not tell lies. Everyone has to say what's on their mind, and they have to tell the truth all the time. The family has moved into Danchi, a housing project town development during Japan's economic boom. They move into this home believing there's a bright future waiting for them at this place. It's their mecca. But with the passing of time, their hope is reduced to a dream long forgotten. And the close bond that they all held with each other starts to disintegrate as they learn each member of the family is harboring secrets.
I just realized that 3 of these films are very much focused on economic issues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so... there you go. I wonder if it falls the theme under any of his other films. Because I wouldn't really say Tokyo Rampage focuses on economic issues, but definitely Blue Spring, because it's in the backyard, Hanging Garden, which is in the forefront, and even Monsters Club, which again is kind of... it's an aspect of the characters, kind of his... I don't know the word I'm looking for. Fuck it, we'll get there when we get there.
But no, I understand what you're saying. It's an element to his stories, and I would agree that Tokyo Rampage is just of what the name says. It's just violent kids. That's all it's about. So yeah, I'm gonna say the movie is about a family, but really it's really becomes more about the mother character, which is played by Kyoko Kazumi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say, and you also get there's a lot of interaction from the grandmother, who is played by I apologize for the names. I guess I shouldn't say apologize for the names. I apologize for my shitty pronunciation of the names. Michio Okuzu?
Okuzu?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
And the daughter is played by Annie Suzuki. The son is played by Masahiro Hirota, and the father is played by Itsuji Itao.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, it's really just the movie is just really about the mother.
I think so. It kind of starts off not really focusing on her, but how it evolves, it's very much about her. And looking at the movie in retrospect, she's really the only interesting aspect about the film, at least for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say when the movie starts off, you're introduced to every member of the family when they're having this conversation after the daughter asks where she was conceived at, and the mother starts to say, "Oh, we went to a love hotel," which is just such a weird concept to me. That these hotels just
how did they word it? I can't. Where did you cook me up?
Yeah,
was the question.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure is the proper translation or not.
Yeah, that's
because I've never heard that term before.
It's a really good way to phrase it.
Yeah.
I guess this movie, I'm gonna say, after you get past that initial family introduction, the movie doesn't hesitate to start getting into a very creative visual style, where the camera is just kind of rotating and swaying. I believe at the beginning it's kind of sitting on top of a bus, correct? Or is that later on?
The thing that I remember is the credits open, and it's the only time I like the rotating shot, to be honest, where it shows the house that they live in, the apartment, and that's the camera rotates, and then you get blue sky, and that's where it shows the title of the film.
Yeah, like I say, it was.
But for the most part, I didn't like the cinematography in this film.
You're just not sophisticated enough to appreciate it. No, it's.
I don't know. I just felt it. To me, it felt awkward a lot of times.
It is awkward just because it's not a usual camera movement. I'm gonna say, the beginning, the image. I guess I should say the image. The camera rotates 360, and the rest of the time the camera does this swaying action, as if it was on a swing, and it didn't distract me, but it's just you don't understand its purpose of doing that. If a camera moves, and I guess I shouldn't say that because I appreciate creativity in the visuals, but from a technical aspect, if a camera moves, it needs to have a reason. There needs to be. It's being done for something. You can't really just do it just because.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand being distracting. It didn't bother me too much, although while it was happening, it did pull me out. I guess I had to say it's distracting because when it was happening, I stopped and say, why are you doing it like this? I was trying to.
I can't point to a particular scene, but I know there was once or twice where I didn't think it was warranted at all. There was nothing really. It was just a regular conversation, and then he decided to rotate the camera in 360.
Did it rotate the camera? I'm saying I know it's swayed, but I don't recall it rotating beyond that opening.
No, it did in a couple points.
No, I'm saying I wasn't trying to call you a liar. I just really didn't remember.
Yeah.
And earlier in the podcast, as we mentioned, it was the film was based on a book. I have no idea about this, so I'll let you explain that aspect of it.
Well, it's based on a book.
Well, shit.
A book that was quite popular at the time. And I don't really know much about the book, to be honest. I'm guessing that it was long enough that there was too much material to put into a film.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel there is a lot of subplots kind of lacking in this film.
Yeah.
One character I would definitely point to was kind of the character that comes from, it's somewhat trite in an outsider comes into a family and kind of changes their dynamic. And the character that came into the family was kind of, I didn't care for her, and in fact, I kind of got confused. I didn't realize that she was the same person sleeping with the father as she was the one tutoring the kid until, she was around for a while in the film. Like, I didn't pick up that they were the same character.
I got that they were the same character because there is a sequence earlier where you see the father messing around with her at the beat outside of a building, and they see the son. I'm saying it's one of those details that you could easily you just miss because it's a very split second, and you can kind of recognize it from the building. But what I got mixed up with was the woman that the father meets with at the restaurant. So I didn't know if that was...
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was two different women or if that was the same woman. Because when she's at the party at the family party and gets sick, somebody calls the father and says it's his S friend.
Yeah, that's true. So, I guess because she gets attached to him pretty fucking fast then, because they have like one dinner together, and he basically wants to. The father has a foot fetish.
Yeah, I'm saying
it appears, but they go outside, and she starts rubbing his cock with her foot. So if they did get that connection, it was pretty fast, and that in itself is kind of, you would think there'd be more explanation to maybe not the father, but the we didn't write down her name, but the stranger that came into the house, some sort of background that has made her like this, where she wants to get involved with the family, like become the teacher to the kid and build a sexual relationship with the father. And she even takes on a weird relationship with everyone in the family.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to mention that, because it's based on a book, it feels like there's they try to condense the material into a movie, and there's a lot of stuff that was lost because of that, trying to cram it in there, because the woman has a relationship with the father beforehand, but the son finds her as a tutor and brings her into the home. So that's like a ridiculously amazing coincidence.
Yeah.
Because there's just no reason why he found her in particular, other than the fact that they refer to their town that they live in as being in the sticks, even though it doesn't really look like it.
No, it looks like a big city.
Yeah, there are those weak moments where you, like you're saying, you could see where they need to get to a point, but they don't spend the time to get to that point. It's just, this happens and then this happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree that, again, it is a very basic concept. Like you said, it's how this family changes. Not entirely by her presence, although she is a big factor in kind of the reveal that everyone has been lying. Yeah. But I kind of see it as 50-50. Yeah, it's basic, and yeah, it's flawed, but it exists more as a framework rather than the core of the movie, because the movie's main point is with the mother and her emotional aspect of it. And
I think that's definitely what saves it from just makes it stand out a bit.
Yeah, because if it was just that story of the disintegration of this family and this stranger being the drawing a blank, but being like the starting point of that disintegration, I would have a major issue with it. But it's just, to me, it's just a framework. So I was able to kind of ignore the basicness of it, because the movie really does it spends almost the entire time with the mother. And say this is just kind of something that's happening in the background to justify certain aspects.
Yeah. Well, even like there is times when it focuses on everyone else, like we talked at the beginning, it focuses on the two kids and the father and kind of them lying and doing all these things behind the scenes. But I felt the entire time it was more about how it was affecting the mother character.
It was.
So I wasn't as focused on them, but the idea of the family and her kind of happy demeanor and who she was.
Yeah, and saying, as you said, the characters are, the rest of the characters are flat. They really are. They're not explored very well. I'm saying because it is everything ties back to the mother and just where she's at, how it affects her, and how it changes the dynamic of the family. Really, the only character that's given any sort of depth is Eriko's mother, the grandmother.
Yeah, and she doesn't have as much screen time as anyone else, but she has a very strong presence and a very good backstory, and the way she interacts with Eriko is very interesting.
Yeah, I would say because they treat each other like they hate each other, and yet you learn that there is love there because Eriko basically blames her mother for everything, as being this like empty person who didn't have the childhood that she needed.
Well, the whole reason she started a family was so that she wouldn't. It was kind of in revolt of her mother that she would have a family and not fuck up like her mother did. And I do love that one scene where she kind of talks about how she got to that point. How since she was 15 years old, she was keeping track of her cycle. How she dressed and acted the way that she knew that would get her the husband that would be ideal for a husband. And just scouting out and finding the guy, and just everything was meticulously planned for her to get a family.
And it shows like you, I'm gonna say you said it best. She's kind of it's meticulous to a point of being psychotic, but at the same time, it shows her being you feel sorry for her.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's a strong point, and it's very weird because it's like you feel like you shouldn't feel sorry for her because I'm saying nothing's genuine for her. She's doing things because that's the way she feels it needs to be.
Well, one line that she gives later on, and I'm not sure, it's not going to be a direct quote, but part of her reason was, if you commit to the lie, it eventually becomes the truth. Just I'm always going to be happy. I've been happy for years, so even though this has become the reality that I live in, so I keep this happy demeanor, I keep up the lie because this is how I want to see my family, so I kind of forget all these things that they're doing behind my back.
Yeah, I'm saying it and a character makes a good judgment on her, says you smile but you're dead on the inside, and I think that's like a great kind of like summary of people who do this, who they're not happy but they convince themselves that they are just to get through life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not really until like probably like last 5 minutes of the film until she really has any sort of emotion other than being happy.
Now, I'm gonna say, would you say that's triggered by the rain sequence?
I think it's just that general overall sequence with her family where they all kind of come out with at the same time with all their secrets. They kind of all come to light at once, and then talking with her mom afterwards about it as well. And her mom kind of gives some insight that just kind of reminds her when she was a kid and a bit more emotional. So I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what the trigger was, but it was just a lot going on at once.
Yeah.
And I think that for the first time overwhelmed her.
Yeah, because it is... Because up until this point, she's been able to live her lie, and it's just a series of everything kind of just slowly eroding away that lie. I'm saying it, and I guess it kind of ties it back into his themes, because you can pinpoint everything relating back to this girl's youth.
Yeah.
And I just find it very interesting that this director is very... I'm going to say, I guess I should stop calling director. It's Toyoda's obsession with youth.
Yeah, for sure.
And it does feel like he stepped away from that, though, because it is a focal point of the movie. It's not the entire focus of the movie. And I think this movie felt a little more mature for him because it's not necessarily about youth, but it is about life.
And that actually, to me, was a deterrent, as well as a 2-hour runtime, to be honest.
So what you're saying...
Because it's...
I was sorry. I was just going to make a smart-ass remark, but I'll let it go. I'm saying sorry.
No, his other films are short and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
They don't fuck around. They're very much point A to point B. And I'm thinking this is probably because of the source material. But this film seems to meander a bit more than his other work.
I would agree with that, yeah. I'm going to say just because a lot of it feels like it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, like, exactly.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, we were talking about, the character, the tattooed character who shows up and takes the daughter to the Love Hotel. Yeah. Say, if it seemed like she knew who he was, or that he was supposed to have some sort of significance, but he doesn't really do anything.
Well, he whispers in her ear at some point, like, your family's going to be destroyed or something like that. Like, he knows some sort of background, or he knows her. Mm-hmm. Even when he first surprises her, she seems to know who he is. So again, that kind of makes me think that a lot of it just wasn't able to fit in from the novel.
Yeah, and say, either something didn't translate from the novel to the movie, or something that was shot in the movie got cut out eventually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like his character, the only thing I noticed that he did was that he took pictures of the daughter, and then those pictures ended up in a porno magazine, and then the dad ends up jerking off to the porno magazine. And say, again, it's kind of like the blind joke from Blue Spring. It's just this building up to this one punchline.
Mm-hmm. So with the blood raining, did that work for you?
It was a good visual, but it was kind of just empty.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I mean, you get this idea that she has a lot of violence in her because she's so repressed, and she does have a sequence early on where she visualizes herself killing her coworker with a fork. I'm saying you can draw some parallels between the two scenes, like the blood representing everything just kind of just raining down on her, but there's still just nothing there, really.
No.
Say,
I do like in that flashback scene where the blood actually like fills up the screen. That was kind of a funny touch.
Yeah.
But I didn't like. Where do you think the title comes from? Other than the book,
I'm saying the only thing I can assume is it's her garden outside, but it holds no meaning in the movie. The only thing you get is the son talking to the woman who's tutoring him. He says, "Do you think that the people who constructed this building put all the windows to one side so they could get sunlight?"
Mm-hmm.
So that they would feel happiness. She says, "No, that's for clothes." And so I assume that there's something in there, and it relates to the garden. But again, it's just one of those elements that's there, but nothing's done with it.
She seems legitimately happy too, and she's tending to her garden. Mm-hmm. And I think in book form there would be an internal monologue which would give us a lot more depth into who she is and the significance of her getting away through her gardening. Yeah,
I'm saying then you also have the sequence when she goes to her mother's house to get her pocketbook. She starts having the flashbacks of when she was miserable as a child, and you see a garden flooding. You see a garden flooding. So there is an emphasis there, but again, there's just nothing done with it.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, I don't want to call this a bad movie, but to me, it's like emotionally dry.
Yeah. I did think the ending was kind of strong and sentimental, though.
Yeah, I'm saying
that they kind of everyone knew they were lying, but they still kind of came back and, they still love the mother, wife, they still like her in her role.
Yes, I'm saying everyone still loves Eriko. I'm saying it. He said it seems like everyone's just kind of splitting off and everything's falling apart, but there is still this love for her there. I'm saying it's just it does still feel like a little bit of an odd turn because it's so last minute.
Yeah.
Like if like the only clue you get is the son has a flower drawn around a date on a calendar. That's like the only build up you get to it. So it's a good solid ending, but it feels last minute.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what you're saying. It's like they're just shoving all this information into a movie, but they don't spend the time to get to those points.
Yeah. Yep. So it's hard for me to say. I need to see more of his films because I'm interested how much it influences him, what he's working on, because he did the screenplay for this one. And then Blue Spring, it was co-written by him. So, because this film to me is still drastically different than anything else he's done. So I would like to see his couple other films that I've missed, and just kind of see how he deals with the source material in those ones.
Yeah. And, speaking of being drastically different, this is also his most well-received movie. And I guess it's just very odd, because it's...
I don't get it.
The only thing I can think of is that it's more approachable. And say, because, as we talked, his movies center a lot around youth. And saying this has some of those elements in it, but it's more about, the emotional state of this character, where she's at and where she ends up at. And I guess you can say it's not strictly, even though it's about this, wife and mother, it's what she's going through can be applied to anyone. Whereas, if you're a grumpy old man like us, when you see movies about youth, you just kind of get annoyed. Not necessarily with him, but just kind of annoyed. It's like, fuck you kids. I don't need, just get the fuck away from my movies. But this is something that I'm going to say, even, young person, old person, man, woman, whatever, you can apply it to you. What she's going through, the idea of creating this false existence to be happy.
Yeah.
But it's...
For sure. Yeah,
I'm going to say, but again, it feels... I can say, I can't really say because I haven't seen all of his movies, but it feels like his weakest movie.
Yeah. I would agree. Like I said, the only other one I've seen is Nine Souls. So out of all the ones I've seen, this one has been the weakest by, I think, quite a bit. It probably didn't hurt that it was based on a novel that was very popular at the time either. Mm-hmm. So that could have got it actually more noticed by critics as well.
Yeah. You say this is a very safe drama, basically.
Yeah.
I guess that's all I have to say. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say on that one. So we'll move on. Okay, so the last one we chose here was Monsters Club 2011, having abandoned modern civilization. Ryochi, I believe, lives in an isolated, self-sufficient life on snow-covered mountains and sends mail bombs to CEOs of corporations and TV networks. One day he encounters a mysterious creature in the forest. That night his brother, who had committed suicide, appears before him at his cabin. The apparition takes Ryochi beyond a door where Ryochi learns the truth about his family. Okay, so this film kind of kicks off with an internal monologue to try to establish who Ryochi is. And I know we disagree on this somewhat, so I'll try to break down my view a bit, and then I'll let you counter a bit here. I definitely think it's up for interpretation. But I think it would be a deterrent to some people because the content, the way he explains it, is pretty childish and simple. Like, it's not a very smart idea of reasoning behind being antisocial or anti-disestablishment. Damn it, I wrote it down. Anti-disestablishmentarian. There we go. It's like, I think it's like the longest word in the dictionary, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, I think it kind of shows how flawed he is as a character. Like, he definitely has problems and this negative view of society. But because he explains it in a somewhat simple manner, I found it kind of more relatable. Because I think a lot of us can't really point to one thing that's wrong with civilization, so we make a lot of broad generalizations. And I feel that this was kind of what the character was doing. So even though it wasn't an intelligent opening monologue, I still felt it was very realistic and kind of helped push the character for me.
Yeah, I'd say I don't have a problem with the monologue per se. It has its purpose. You understand the character, and it sets up what the movie is. As you said, my problem is that it's very stupid and childish. Like when once the monologue first started going, I pretty much just said, "Oh no," while it was going on, because it's like, "Oh fuck me if I have to listen to this throughout the entire movie." Like when he's like, the one that really stuck out to my mind was he says, people get up and go to work and they're just slaves, and that just made me roll my eyes, because that's just shit you hear constantly. I mean, you hear it from even simpletons like Russell Brand. It's just a very simplistic kind of first year philosophy student trying to seem like they had this deep understanding of socio-political issues. And so I absolutely fucking hated it. But I understand its purpose. And like you're saying, I just flat out hated it. I'm saying when we were talking about it, you said, it's not really about his ideals. It's about you understanding who he is. And that's very true. And
it kind of sets up how he adapts and how he kind of grows.
Yes. I'm saying, I was like, okay, I still hate it, but you're right. I'm saying, again, it's not about the political ideals. It's about him.
Yeah. So to summarize again, he's very a isolated existence. He does his own hunting. He basically feeds himself. He lives completely self-efficient. He just doesn't interact with society whatsoever, other than the bombs that he sends. Which at first, honestly, I found somewhat humorous. But then later on in the film, it kind of has a bit more of significance. And kind of a side note that I read afterwards, which kind of changed a lot of my views of this film, is it was based on the writings of the Unabomber. Which also kind of led to my idea of him, the opening monologue about him just being a flawed individual and trying to get over that. Because when he was reading about the Unabomber, I don't think he was saying, like, yeah, this guy knew what was going on. I imagine he approached it as more, this guy was very simplistic and troubled. So.
Yeah, I'm saying, I know it wasn't supposed to. The character is not supposed to come across as somebody who understands society. It is supposed to have. He just hates everything around him.
Yeah.
And say I just hate the way it was worded. Like I said, it felt very childish and simplistic.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'd say again, I will. I concede to your opinion. It's not about those political ideals. It's about you understand that this is just a character that's. He's just he has issues. He has flaws. He's angry. And he just doesn't know where to guide that anger. So it's just at the world around it.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the design of the monsters? I'm going to kind of put in air quotes.
They're interesting. Like,
I thought the first reveal was pretty terrifying, to be honest. Just because it's one of those shots where it only kind of gives them a moment, so you can't necessarily establish exactly how it looks.
Well, the problem is, for me, I didn't find it terrifying because when you first see him, I thought it looked like somebody who had the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man explode on him. But I mean, they're very interesting designs.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to say they're comical because they're actually not. Especially the more you see them, they're very interesting. I guess that's just the best way I can put it.
I think you would hate it based on, well, it's an aesthetic thing. You would either like it or hate it. I can understand someone saying it's goofy, but at the same time, it worked for me, and I wouldn't make an argument over it. That
Yeah, no, it's just it's good at catching you off guard because it's not something you really have seen before.
yeah. Again, with this soundtrack, it was interesting. It was more very subtle. There was a lot of like minimal noise and scratching and electronic stuff. So it was very weird and atmospheric in this one, but I still felt it was very effective. So I don't know if you kind of had the same opinion or like the shift in music that he used in this one.
No, I absolutely agree. The movie is filled with a lot of ambient noise, so it's a lot of the wind and the creaking of the floorboards, and he found music to bring that out. So you almost can't distinguish the difference between the score and the sounds of his environment. It all just kind of comes together, and it's almost a little bit maddening because it has that kind of drone sound, so it's not like a contemporary score. It's just this. It's just sound. It's kind of pressure, and so it kind of just gets in your head.
But I think that was the point, so I'm still saying it's effective.
Oh no,
I'm still giving him props for that.
No, I absolutely agree. I'm gonna say I don't know if what I said came off as a criticism or not, but no, I agree. It's a very effective design, and I actually really want this soundtrack available because there is some guitar work in there, and it's goddamn, is it so good? But I mean, this is such attentive detail in the sound design and the score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I didn't think you were talking negative about it, but just kind of to, because some people, they hear the idea of drone and think that, or just the way it's pushed would be a deterrent to someone. So just kind of emphasizing that.
Yeah, no,
it's
again,
not,
as you said, it's very subtle, and it's designed really to. It's designed to give you emotion, but it also kind of it manipulates your emotion in the right way. It kind of, God, I don't know how I want to say this. It almost kind of puts you in this mindset of like something just kind of driving you crazy.
Yeah,
like it's just that idea of just this low frequency sound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, as you said, it's so good, so good.
Yeah. As it when the film starts, within, I always try to pick these imaginary times that I don't actually know, but I think a lot of people could establish pretty quickly that this is pretentious and heavy-handed. And for me, it really wasn't. I don't really think it was pushing a particular message. I thought it was more of a character study on this guy.
Absolutely. As I said, I absolutely hated that opening monologue, but I still got into this movie. And if I can still get into this movie after really fucking hating that opening monologue, I think this will actually fare better to most people. I'm saying because there's really.
I think a lot of people would hear that beginning though, in the first bit of the film, and kind of be like, I don't get this. This message is talking down, like I said, heavy-handed message.
Yeah, it will feel like it has a political ideal to it, but it really doesn't. It's not. It's the political message behind the movie is about the character, not the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One random thing, which I don't think makes a difference, but I saw some people online kind of discussing it and trying to make it played out some significance. But do you think he was hallucinating, or was it actual aberrations? And does it matter?
Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I don't think. I'm saying I don't think he was. Well, I mean, yes, he is seeing apparitions, but I don't think they were actually ghosts. I think it was basically his subconscious coming to fruition of seeing his brothers as these monsters. Mm-hmm. And I love that bit of dialogue. a forest full of monsters.
Yeah. In my notes, I jumped ahead here to the end, but let me try to jump back because there's a few scenes I want to mention. At one point, his sister visits him, and they kind of talk about the last time the entire family was together. So you get kind of a cut back to that, but later on when the brother visits him, and to note too, this brother that visits him committed suicide, and he is kind of pushing the main character to commit suicide as well. But there's this one scene where he takes him into the flashback of him being with his family, and it's hard to explain here with mixing names, but that scene where he gives the protagonist a bomb before he sees his family and basically says, like, are you sure you want to give this gift to the family? Which is kind of like saying, are you sure you want this to be your legacy when all your family has left you behind?
Yeah.
So I found that I really like that scene a lot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, before I get into that, now, I'm going to say he has two brothers, correct? One committed suicide and one died of illness, right?
One died in a motorcycle accident.
Okay. I'm going to say, but he sees both of them.
But the one who died in the motorcycle accident is not really as relevant.
I'm going to say,
as the one who committed suicide.
Yeah, I'm going to say, but he sees both of them in the woods, right? Like, the one that committed...
No, the other one shows up in his house. He only sees the brother who committed suicide in the woods.
Okay, because I was just confused because the one who committed suicide, I remember he shows up and he says, that's, because there's something on the roof, and he says, that's so-and-so. You better go catch him before he disappears.
Yeah.
So that was just one of those things where I got confused myself because I didn't know who the spirits were supposed to represent. I didn't know if there was just the one brother or if it was both the brothers.
Yeah, that's why going back, I kind of had a hard time explaining that scene with, taking the bomb into the flashback and kind of asking if that's how he wants to be remembered. But
yeah, I'm saying we're unsophisticated. We can't really remember character names. But no, I'm saying, and that scene is very important because it's like you're saying, it's the brother that commits suicide is trying to convince him that he needs to do this. He just needs to kill himself too, and he can go back. He can go back to this. He can go back to the way things were if he kills himself. He can exist in this particular world. So essentially,
but he's challenging him at the same time. So he both wants him to die, but it's kind of like he's giving him two options.
Yes.
It's like, you want to commit suicide, but at the same time, there's, just remember these things that happened.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying that's really the important aspect because it shows that this movie is not about political ideals. It is about this character and how he's reached this moment in his life where everything's come to fruition, and now he has to make a decision. And he has two paths in front of him: one to follow the path of his brother, or to follow the path of his ideals. And that's just what the movie is about: him coming to that decision.
Yeah. Again, touching on how Toyoda just uses touches of surrealism. Again, going back to that scene where he sees his family, he opens up his cabin door, and then he's in the scene where all of his family was having a lunch together. And the camera, the tint changes as well to give it the idea that it took place in the past. Mm-hmm. But again, it's all just these small scenes that he does every once in a while that I always appreciate. Like, he doesn't ever overuse those aspects, but he does always use a touch of it in all of his films.
Yeah, it's a good way to get you into like the mental state of the character.
Yeah, but he doesn't linger there long enough that you become disinterested, or it just becomes an aspect of the character.
Yeah, the movie's not trying to be weird, and it's not trying to create a separation of reality. It's just trying to help the viewer understand where a character is.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess moving closer to there is a lot of really good scenes. I do like that few scenes of him appearing in a field and seeing his brother kind of creep up behind him.
Oh yeah, those wide shots where it's kind of a downward angle, so it's them standing in the snow, but it's because it's in the snow. There's no distinguishing features, so they're like in this empty void.
It was nice. And did you notice no footprints?
Yeah.
How the fuck do you shoot that?
I almost want to say they went back in there and digitally erased them, because I don't see any other way.
That probably makes sense, yeah. That has to be the only way.
Yeah, because...
And it is just snow, so that makes sense. It can't be that hard of an effect.
Yeah, because I mean, I would say they probably blew it out some just to make sure there's no distinguishing features, because it is meant to be this kind of purgatorish empty void.
Yeah, he's just there. He didn't make a point to get there. He didn't walk there. That's just where he is.
I'm saying it is hinted at that they're just in this empty field of snow, but that's the point, is there's just nothing there.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's the suicide sequence, that's part of that, I thought was just handled really well, because it could have come off as shocking and cheap, but instead it's very to be cheesy. I'm gonna say it's a very poetic scene. Yeah,
for sure. So eventually he ends up having to head back to the city. So I'm curious, what do you think was the significance of him painting his face?
I honestly don't know. Like, I still think about that, because, I mean, to me that whole sequence is just, it's his last act of defiance. It's like you were kind of saying earlier, he's challenging his brother and defying his brother, who wants him to go down a different path. Mm-hmm. And so but that still doesn't, to me, I still can't find the justification as to why he made himself look like the monster version of his brother.
To me, a very simplistic answer would also be that he used it to get away from the cops. Mm-hmm. So he could not be identified.
That could be. Well, but they still knew who he was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sad. I know it's, a faux pas when you're a movie nerd. You're supposed to call, whatever bullshit answers to make it sound like you understand. But that was just a sequence I don't know the answer to.
Visually, it was strong. I like when he's sitting on the bus and a couple of people don't notice, sit beside him and then kind of take it in and move their seats. But just seeing him on the bus with the face paint on. And then, of course, when he gets into the city, it's interesting. Even though he had the face paint on, he kind of seemed to move like a phantom. No one really noticed it or took note.
I'm going to say, and I think that was the intention, that he is like a phantom. But at the same time, that's one of those aspects of Japanese culture I'm curious about. They're like, I hate to use the word, but kind of like programmed not to respond when people are like that, when somebody's basically being a fucking lunatic out in the middle of the street. Because you kind of see that again in like Tokyo Rampage. At the beginning, this guy just beats the shit out of somebody, in this intersection, and no one pays it attention. Is that because that's the way the society is, or is that just the way the movie was?
Yeah.
But no, in general, I think that yes, he's just somebody that's not. No, but yes, like a phantom. I was going to say like he's not really there, but I think that gives the wrong impression.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm saying that, and that face paint really just kind of added to the emotional impact of the ending when he's scraping it off in the middle of the street.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I think the poem they used was very well chosen. And again, gave that emotional sting to the end of the film that I think Toyoda Takashi is very good at.
Yeah. Was that poem the character's poem, or was it somebody else's?
We did some research, and it is someone else's.
Okay.
But he references throughout the film, because part of the thing that he likes doing in the cabin is reading poetry. And in fact, he refers to a book that his brother gave him. And apparently he's read it a lot. And I have it down here, I thought, or maybe I don't have it. Anyways, watch the movie. when they reference the poet, you might be able to. Oh, here it is. It's Kokubitsu, or Farewell, from Kenji Miyazawa.
Okay.
So that's Miyazawa.
Okay. Now I'm starting to remember because the last letter he writes, he's basically, I'm saying, they say to the Prime Minister, but I don't know. It's referring to the Prime Minister of Japan, or like the Prime Minister of like broadcasting. Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I have no clue how Japanese politics or anything like that works.
Yeah, so the poem that I thought that was being read aloud was like the poem, because he says, if you put my poem in the paper, I'll stop sending bombs, but if you don't, I'm going to send one big one. And so I thought that poem was, the one that he wanted, but now I remember, because the movie ends, it shows him opening up that last parcel, and I think he pulls out his manifesto, and then he puts in a poem. That's right.
Yeah.
But yes, I suck at interpreting poems, so I can't tell you the significance of it, but the way it's handled in the ending makes it really good. It's not quite up there with Blue Spring, but it's really solid.
Yeah. Well, to me, because he has that moment near the end where he talks with his sister and kind of, he says to her, if the brother who committed suicide ever appears before her, just ignore him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the poem kind of establishes his relationship with his last sibling, because the poem is very much about, I have given up on this culture, but just so you know, that one day you're going to be happy. It's like a very short summary of the poem, but they chose the ideal poem, I think, to kind of establish who the character was and what the story was about.
Yeah, and say it's almost like, to me, the poem's like almost saying, find your happiness. He goes, I will fight for you to find your happiness.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I've given up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going back, like I mentioned, Hanging Garden was too fucking long. This one is like an hour and 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. But again, I like how, I think in the other films that we watched, he doesn't fuck around. There's not any useless filler in here.
Yeah, no, this is a very streamlined movie, and that I guess that could sound awful, but it's really not. I would say, to me, this is very admirable because there's absolutely no bullshit in this movie. There's no filler. There's no needless characters. There's no subplots. It is just this singular idea of this character dealing with his internal conflict, and that's what the movie focuses on. I'm saying, to me, that's very rewarding as a viewer, because
they could have done Phil, but then it would have, I think, made the film, like, if they added more surrealism or focused it more on kind of how he felt and his opinions, that it would have became either preachy or pretentious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people just get too, I mean, not people as in viewers, but like people as in people who make movies, they get too hung up on runtimes. Like right now, everyone really needs to learn how to cut down their movies. There's a lot of great stuff, but it doesn't mean it has to be in the movie. And to me, that's what I really loved about this. And say it's not because it had a short runtime in comparison to Hanging Garden, but because he knew what needed to be there and he knew when to end. So it's not dragging it out because someone said, "Oh, it can only be a feature if it's 90 minutes," and that's just not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Say, it's a movie that's dictated by its content, not by not what somebody thinks it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend this film to people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like it's, I know we had our disagreements over the monologue, but it's a very, not to like repeat ourselves, it's a very realized movie. you could nitpick it a little bit, I guess. I don't have any nitpicks with it. It's just a very well conceived, very well executed movie, and it is solid.
Yeah.
Like I almost think I like it a little bit more than Blue Spring, just because it's such a good, just so well done.
Yeah. The only reason why I kind of thought afterwards is I think there's less to kind of catch more of a mainstream audience. I think you have to be able to relate to this character a lot more than the characters in any of his other films. And to relate to him, you have to at least have an understanding or appreciation for people or that have gone to that dark place, whether you have yourself or can understand that. So it's a very pessimistic film in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the things that the character goes through, there's not a happy ending, and there's not really too many. I don't know. I just think it would be a harder movie to approach than Blue Spring.
Yeah, it is a very, no, I was gonna say it's a very niche movie, but it's really not. It's a very personal movie.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I'm gonna say because there are things that will definitely alienate audiences, but there's so much to appreciate about it.
Yeah. And the last thing, though I think we pretty much covered this, I don't think he gets redemption at the end.
No. I'm saying it's a very ambiguous ending as to what's happening. Like, I have my own ideas of what's going on, but he's a character that can't be redeemed.
Yeah.
Like I say, he's hurt too many people, and he's just at a point where there's no coming back from. So either he is going to, I hate to spoil it, but I'm going to say he's basically either going to cause major destruction and, do a Unabomber and, totally decimate a building and the lives of people, or he's going to kill himself. Those are his only endings.
That's the only two options that I really see as well, yeah. And actually, going back now, as far as the face paint goes, maybe that's when he decided for sure that he was going to go through a suicide and take on the form of his brother.
Perhaps.
So I'll throw that out there now. I don't know if it's accurate. It's still kind of vague for me. But
yeah, because you do also see him running around with the bag, and it's kind of indicated that there might be a bomb in it, but you don't. It's never shown for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so he might not even have that there. But regardless, my impression was he's going to die by his own hand.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it sad too. Again, with the crowd ignoring him, and when he's down on his knees and kind of almost screaming out in frustration, how he's still very much ignored. Mm-hmm. So again, Toyoda is just so good at packing an emotional punch. Like I'm so desensitized, and it's hard for me to feel any kind of emotion for films. But I mean, the endings of both Blue Spring and Monsters Club got me a bit worked up. It got me pretty sad. So
yeah, I'm saying I think that's just. I think he needs to be really acknowledged as a contemporary Japanese filmmaker because he handles characters so well.
Yeah. But as far as the podcast goes, this is going to be the most obscure name. And people probably won't even recognize it.
I hope that's not...
I'll probably put up a picture of Blue Spring because I can always put the picture with the podcast, so I'll probably do that.
Yeah, because I think everyone recognizes the picture of the two kids
smoking.
Yeah, with the cigarettes in each other's faces.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's criminal almost that he doesn't get more recognition than he does.
So that's the way it usually goes, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think we covered everything. I don't really have too many afterthoughts about the director.
No, not really. I would say, even though Hanging Garden is his weakest movie, in our opinion, it's still it's a good little movie. I would say it's just not without its flaws. But I would say he's somebody I definitely need to finished going through his filmography. He just has. He's just somebody to me that he grasps the concept of what it takes to make a movie.
Yeah, for sure. I will do the hard and annoying thing that I always do, but rate the films.
Like give them a.
I know that's always bullshit and hard to do, but I'm going to make you rate them.
Like give them each their own.
Favorite to least favorite.
Least favorite, Hanging Garden. I would give that probably like. I guess I'll do like a 5-star rating system. Hanging Garden, I'd give that like a 3.5 stars. Again, I'm gonna say it's a very good movie, just a little emotionally dry for me.
Yeah.
Then I'd do. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna do Tokyo Rampage first. At just 3 stars because it's not emotionally strong, but just an entertaining movie. I'm saying it has its cool moments because it is trying to be a cool movie. I'm saying it's just fun. It's not emotionally strong, but it's not insulting either. It's just an okay movie. And then I'll do Hanging Garden at 3.5 stars. And again, just emotionally dry, but still a well done movie. Monsters Club, I'd give a solid 4 stars. I mean, just a well executed character piece where it's just every piece of the movie is just perfectly executed.
Yeah.
And then just A Blue Spring would probably also be 4-star. And say just again for the same reasons, just one of those perfectly executed movies. There was just a little more emotion for me to attach to in Blue Spring in comparison to Monsters Club.
Yeah, those two are really hard. I would switch Hanging Garden and Tokyo Rampage just because I really felt Tokyo Garden had a, like I said, it just, you could tell there was a lot of stuff that did not translate from the book, and that kind of drove me crazy. Where at least Tokyo Rampage was a streamlined story. And then, yeah, I think Blue Spring and Monsters Club are pretty much dead even. Mm-hmm. Like they're, would you call them similar films?
No, I honestly wouldn't. They have similar themes of isolation and just kind of a bleakness, but they're not really similar.
No, I think both of them represent his style. Yeah. But content-wise, they do touch on some of the same themes, but there's enough that I don't think I would call them similar. But again, kind of the emotions and there's a lot of things that elicit the same kind of feelings between the two films. So, but yeah, that's all I really have to say.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, well then, thanks for listening.